When people see me, they see drama. They see a feisty girl, a girl with the attitude, a girl that just doesn't care. But I'm actually a person that has a heart. I got disciplined a lot. My mom, she'll just get mad, like, any little thing. Come home late, any little thing, I'll get disciplined, like phone taken away or beaten, nailing on rice, everything. I was brought up on fighting. You know, since I was 9 years old, I was fighting.
My dad was really abusive. He physically abused my mother really badly, almost killed her. So she finally couldn't take it anymore, so she left the family.
Witnessing domestic violence, living in a violent community where people are killed in the street. All of these are these kind of adverse childhood experience that lead to a traumatized child.
As a 13, 14-year-old, I used to sleep in abandoned houses. And I would sleep with different friends, and I sleep in cars while I was living in the street. You know, you would get beat up on a regular basis, you would get robbed, you can even get killed. So a part of surviving in this environment is that you have to instill fear in other people, or else it will be done to you.
You talking about my family, my mother, I'll just punch you right in your face. My mom put me in temporary placement. She didn't know how to handle me. I always leave my first home and stay with my mom, just because I didn't I was around people that I did not know. I did not like the feeling. I wasn't comfortable in someone else's house.
I've never met a youth in the years that I've been doing this that actually wants to come into foster care. You always try to have empathy for that youth and put yourself in their shoes. Like, how would you feel waking up one day in a complete stranger's home? You really don't understand why or what the next step's going to be or where you're going to be tomorrow.
It's not my fault that I'm here. But then I'm going to these strangers' house who say that they want me, but then it just ends up that they don't want me.
My foster mom, she locked her refrigerator, she locked her cabinets, she was very verbally abusive. I just went through the process of going through foster home to foster home to foster home.
Every time a child moves in placement, we can correlate it with a higher probability that they will cross over into the delinquency system.
Now I really think there's something wrong with me. The foster parents don't want me, then they telling me that I gotta go. So, I had to do what was next best, what I knew. I have to make money. How I'm gonna make money? Well, I ain't never really had a serious job, so what would I qualify for? It just turned out I qualified for drugs.
I was a very angry kid. And once I get angry, it was almost impossible to stop me.
One of the things that happens with youth who cross over between child welfare and juvenile justice is that they are like an eggshell. And then if we traumatize that eggshell, if it experiences some hits here or there, it can crack.
I seen some girl with my baby father, and I just ran up to her and punched her in her face and, dragged her down the stairs and beat her up. And I was going to court and stuff, and I got placed.
The youth who was in detention, statistics show us that that youth is more likely to learn how to commit crimes and how to survive on the street in a way that is really going to be harmful to him. So harsher results definitely lead to much, much worse outcomes for kids.
The crossover youth practice model was created as a way to address the youth's trauma.
Before the crossover youth practice model, we did not have the type of collaboration that we felt was necessary to successfully work with the youth and their families to address all the issues involved.
So for probation, the only thing that they've ever gotten is a youth might be arrested for battery. And knowing that that youth actually was protecting his mom because the batterer came home has been an eye-opening experience. They're beginning to incorporate some of the child welfare aspects and putting into their service plan.
With the CYPM, it's been really eye-opening for us, the effect of trauma on youth. Children in the child protective system are almost always victims of some type of trauma. And that can impact their decision making.
My uncle's friend had raped me. I was 13. He did go to jail. My uncle bailed him out of jail. I wanted to kill myself, but actually ran away from home. I used to start trouble outside on the trains, on the bus. I used to just be wild.
Understanding that not only helps me put the conduct in perspective, but it helps me get help for the youth right away too.
You take a kid who's in a foster care system, most of the time, it has to do with the lack of resources. You take a kid who's in the juvenile justice system, most of the time it has to do with them trying to earn money certain ways, whether it's stealing, robbing, or selling drugs. And they come from neighborhoods where poverty is rampant.
People of color get charged for things or accused of things that whites don't get charged and don't get accused of.
We now know through brain research that impulsive behavior, that peer pressure that they couldn't resist, is one that actually is part of the normal maturation process as the brain is developing into an adult brain. But there's a disparity in how we respond to behavior based upon socioeconomic status.
Kids of color are treated differently. I would be sitting in night court and we would have 16 and 17-year-old kids being brought through the system. They'd been arrested, they'd been booked, and they'd been brought in for arraignment in criminal court. What were they charged with? Riding a bike on the sidewalk. Riding a bike on the sidewalk.
One of the things that the practice model does is to try to shine a light on the disproportionality that we see in the crossover population. Do kids of color get put into group homes at higher rates than kids not of color? Do they move in placement at higher rates? Do they have more school instability? And what we ask our communities to do is to develop an action plan that might make decisions in a more knowing, informed way that would reduce the disproportionality. There are 3 phases to the practice model, and they flow in the order a case would follow from beginning to end.
You're here because of the theft of a cell phone, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
A probation officer interviews the young person who has been arrested, their family. They gather information about their status in school, at home, social activities. We also contact the complainant.
Yes, hi, Miss Ramirez. This is Miss Lawton. How are you?
We make contacts with the ACS planning worker.
Hey, Dad, Sandy, how are you?
We really want to try to get to some of the underlying issues of why they came to our attention in the first place and incorporate some of the child welfare aspects and putting into their service plan.
And the gathering of that information during intake helps us to determine whether or not we can adjust certain cases.
Hi. Hello. Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello. Hi, I'm Miss Lawton.
To deal with some of the trauma they've experienced, there's no need to send that child into court. We can develop a plan around adjustment to do it ourselves.
The adjustment conference is the process by where the child, the family member, the probation officer, and the ACS worker come together as a team.
I understand you guys were displaced and you lost your home, and Tiffany was basically in a foster home for a brief period.
This process requires that the youth as well as their family sign consent forms.
And I'll make sure everyone gets a copy of this.
Right.
We look at what services are needed and what type of case the case is, and they resolve the case within 60 days provided certain conditions are met.
We can work with you, set up a plan, and your case doesn't have to go to court. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay.
If a young person has stolen a cell phone, we might ask that they pay a certain amount of restitution. We might also ask that they maybe go to a program. Once those conditions are met, then the case is dismissed and sealed. It allows the youth to make things right. That's the purpose of adjustment. If the case is not adjusted, the case is then referred to Corporation Counsel.
Where we think that court intervention is required, a petition is filed against the youth.
Once the petition is filed, then an attorney is assigned.
As defense attorneys, when we represent a kid in family court on a delinquency case, our job is to defend them, and regardless of what it is that they're alleged to have done.
Once a youth is brought to court and arraigned, then the judge will conduct called a fact-finding hearing, which is the trial, to decide whether the youth did or did not commit the act he's accused of. And then the last step is the disposition to decide what is the sentence. Is he placed on probation? Is the case even dismissed? Even if someone may be charged with a very serious act, one of the main benefits of the crossover youth practice model is that there are less harsh results that occur as a result of understanding the youth's complete family picture. Most youth are placed, if they are placed, in non-secure facilities. It looks more like a regular home. Then we have a lot of probation programs, and we have many mental health providers here that are really designed for trauma-based therapy for kids that are in the delinquency system but have suffered trauma in the past.
And then looking towards the second part of phase 3, permanency. What are the supports we're putting into place that will last beyond the system involvement? Who will be there for a child to make sure they have the supports they need moving into adulthood.
Parents must consent to the child welfare information being shared between the probation department and the child protective services.
She has to come in.
So we'll set that up before the meeting ends.
Okay.
If consents are not signed, then probation will never know that, in fact, that youth may have been arrested for beating up an offender because he was protecting his sister, or stealing food because there's no food in the house. So probation might actually put a child further into the juvenile justice system because they're not aware of the reasons for a youth's behavior.
The parent and the child have a right to not sign because they are releasing a lot of information that might not always be the most positive.
In some situations, we see them coming through the system and being dealt with, I won't say in a harsher way, but in a way that involves even a higher level of treatment and supervision. And what most people also fail to realize is that if you are adjudicated a juvenile delinquent, you now have a family court record. It can have an impact on educational opportunities, on employment opportunities, on eligibility for a variety of services. For CYPM to work, you would have to have a prosecutor's office that recognizes and appreciates the special needs that these kids have. And you would have to have judges who, across the board, recognize that as well.
Because they are releasing a lot of information, the family would also be informed that they have to speak with their attorneys before signing the form during the intake process, and get more information about how it could be beneficial to the disposition in their case.
We rolled out CYPM in the Bronx, and then we rolled out to Brooklyn, and then we rolled out to the entire city. So the impact already is the Bronx has taken ownership of looking at these youth through a completely different lens. And I think that has been the single most improvement that I've seen, irregardless of whether or not consents have been signed. The ability to share information has been fantastic. We're diverting more cases and using different language and are engaging youth differently because of this collaboration. There are a few youth that have been rearrested while active on the child welfare case. But for those that are not being rearrested, you can see that they're engaged in services. They're reaching out when they're in crisis. They're going back to school.
We're seeing changes in permanency planning, more reunification or stay at home, and less aging out of the system as a permanency goal.
The approach that I would suggest in terms of practitioners who are working with these young people is very simple. Patience. Trauma and conflict and a lot of the different things that these children have experienced didn't occur in 15 days. It took years.
I feel like a person cannot change overnight. It's not easy.
And how important this opportunity for you is?
The counsel that I'm getting here is helping me a lot, is helping me look at things different, like with my anger.
Any questions that you...
I just talk about my feelings and, what are my goals.
Chantel lights up in a different way when you speak about her children. My hope is that she can get past this stage in her life and her children don't have to experience any further trauma of being separated from their mother.
When I see a young person come through probation, the first thing that I see is a child. And I think that's the thing that sometimes people forget. They are children. But I also see children who maybe have made poor choices, but they're not necessarily bad people or bad children.
I heard the word college for the first time when I was 17 years old. I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice and I majored in political science. And I got a bachelor's degree from there, and then Now, I work at ACS as a residential care advocate for the kids who are in the system. That's when I got caught up in the streets. I got caught up in the fast money. When I work with young people, I look at them and I see myself 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and I think to myself, well, what is it that you had that allows you to be the person you are today? And, it was love, compassion, understanding, second chances, people taking interest in me. It made an impact on me that these people are viewing me as somebody. And I internalized that. And once you start seeing yourself in that light, obviously you start wanting to do better for yourself.
There's always a young person out there who has a chance for a better life, and we can impact that if we do our practice in a better way, and we have policies in place that allow that to occur.
They will grow out of some of the challenges that they face and the mistakes that they're making. We just have to give them the opportunity to do so safely.